Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Porters, and I'm joined by sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
Not for me, thank you.
And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and God is my witness, I thought the other guy was Ichi.
Everyone does. Because that's, I don't know, I guess that's how we put the poster. Today, we are covering Ichi the Killer from 2001, directed by one Takashi Miike. This was Bruce's choice. We'll get into a little bit of that in the meantime here. But before we do all that, we do want to say a big giant thank you, man, because it's the top of the month, and as such, we have to say a big thank you to all of our supporters over at patreon.com/HMP. They're the ones who picked the thing that we reviewed last week. They'll get another chance this month as well. Plus, they get the pre-show, post-show, and of course, the Dinger Zone, which has been chock-a-block full of Fast and Furious movies. So check those out. I'm having some people. I've had at least two people tell me that they've never seen any of the Fast and Furious movies, but they are loving our reviews of them.
I wish I could say that.
And we'll be coming up with something new after we finish up those and stuff. And if you want to check those out, head on down to patreon.com/HMP and join up today. We'd really appreciate it. And you know what? But first of all, we do have to... Before we get there, I do want to say the top dogs of the month. We always got to mention them right off the top here. Up at the $40 level, you got your boy Tim. We've got Derek and Matt. So those are those. I can't talk today. Tim and Derek, they're up at the $40 level. I skipped a step and went down to the $20 level where we've got Matt, Alex, and Brian. Thank you guys all. And, of course, everybody else under that $20 label. Thank you all very, very much. You help keep this show going. And we also want to welcome a new member to the fold, Gumpac, Gumpac, that's all in one word here. He has joined in at the $5 level. And as such, Mr. Sean Kovacs has a little something for you.
Average foot speed over uneven ground, barring injuries, is 4 miles an hour. That gives us a radius of 6 miles. What I want out of each and every one of you is a hard target search for every gas station, residence, warehouse, farmhouse, in-house, outhouse, and doghouse in the area for the new HMP member named the Orange Crush.
The Orange Crush. All right, very good. And you know what's hilarious is he's got kind of a he's an African American gentleman. Well, maybe he's a black guy. I don't know where he's from. So I don't want to just say African American. That's not necessarily true. But has a kind of a his hair's dyed a lighter color. So you kind of saw through time there, which is kind of cool.
I didn't even know.
And he gave it to you.
I don't see color.
Mostly because he didn't have a profile picture uploaded when I sent Sean the thing, so it's actually changed. It was one of the little Patreon defaults there, but he's changed it, and Sean saw through time here. And what's the name again?
The Orange Crush.
The Orange Crush. Well, welcome to the Patreon fold. If you, too, would like to be like our buddy Orange Crush, hit us up over at patreon.com/HMP and get all of that good stuff for you today. And please review us on iTunes just while we're here. I might as well go ahead and throw that up at the top of the show. We do appreciate those. It's been a while since we've had, a bunch of new ones and stuff. And I know we've got tons of listeners. It's weird. All of our, I think everybody's staying home and podcast numbers are going up across the board. So
you want your mind blown, Adam?
Please.
I think we had a new review just this week left on iTunes. So thank you for that.
Oh, did we?
Oh, nice.
Well, I mean, I could. Well, we'll do it next week. We'll pull it next week.
I could be wrong too, but I think it was new.
If not, someone make one and we'll do it next week. So we'll appreciate it. And like I said, steal your mama's iPad. We got it. Maria Menounos doesn't compete with this podcast, and we don't want her to. So please, for the love of God, throw us a review on iTunes. If you can't support over at Patreon, we'd really
hire us, Maria Menounos.
Yes, but Maria, come on. We'll sell out to you real fast. You know what I'm saying?
We know you're not listening.
She's not.
You can pay me entirely in matcha.
Hey, look, he can be had for a low price. I need actual dollars, though. Me and Sean, we want greenbacks, not green tea. No, thank you.
Pay Sean exclusively in old DVD copies of this movie we're about to talk about.
All right, so let's get into it. I'm not going to play a trailer because it would all be a language the majority of people listening to this podcast probably do not understand. So, Bruce, your movie choice this week was Ichi the Killer. Explain yourself.
I wanted to review something I'd never seen before, like that's kind of what I'll lean into, is trying to look at something I haven't seen before, something that's a comic book adaptation, maybe something I didn't know was an adaptation until like that week. And then I'll say, hey, we ought to watch this. So I picked this pretty blindly. I was kind of on the fence between this or that Macaulay Culkin Richie Rich movie, and I went with this.
What wow, two further things on the scope. I don't know that you can get any further apart than a PG Richie Rich movie and a Takashi Miike movie. But then again,
the boiling hot water thrown on Richie Rich's back, that one scene.
but but let's get into it then.
It's time for Bruce's comic book connection.
Bruce, you mentioned that this has a comic book connection. What are you talking about?
Well, I used to get criticized on Heroes and Villains, and I'd say rightfully so, because I didn't cover enough manga and manga characters. Well, I think so far on HMP, 2020 has been the year of manga, and all it took was for the entirety of Hollywood to be shut down for 6 months. Now, Ichi the Killer is a manga series by, my autocorrect changed his first name to Video, but I'm pretty sure it's not. I think it's Hideo. By Hideo Yamamoto.
I want you guys to start calling me Video.
I like that. Kid Video. The manga ran from 1998 to 2001. So, for some people, the movie is a 2-hour experience, but it was 3 years for manga readers. And simplified, it's the story of an old geezer using a psychologically damaged killer, who's Ichi, of course, to murder a Yakuza leader so that the geezer can take his money. That's it. That's the story. Now, though he's best known for creating Ichi, Yamamoto also wrote Homunculus, which is about drilling holes in a homeless man's head so he can see ghosts. So I think it's fair to say Yamamoto is into some pretty sadistic stuff.
That old tale, I've heard that tale a million times. Oh, we're just drilling in heads for ghosts.
The Driller Thriller or whatever. His recurring themes are recognized to be crime, sexual deviations, and the human mind. And some background on Yamamoto that might shine just a little bit of light on his dark style is that before creating Homunculus, Hideo Yamamoto actually lived as a homeless person. And he also liked martial arts. So why not mix those two things together in a story? Most of the manga we talk about here on the podcast have ludicrously huge sales numbers, especially when compared to those of Western comics. But that's not the case with Ichi the Killer. One thing that certainly dampened its sales numbers is that it was banned in several parts of Japan, a country that is far more comfortable with tentacle rape than scenes of prolonged, gruesome, realistic torture. Unlike the U.S., which is cool with death, dismemberment, and mass murder in comics, so long as a nipple doesn't make an appearance. Now, the Ichi manga has a large cast of quirky characters, most of which appear pretty faithfully in the movie. Now, Ichi is the main character of the series. He's this psychologically and emotionally disturbed to the point that he acts like a child living in an adult's body. Kakihara is a Yakuza boss, and he's Ichi's prime enemy. He's tired of everything in life and lives to inflict pain on others and himself. There's the old geezer, also known as Jisan. He's the mastermind behind the unrest in the Yakuza family, as well as the puppet master making Ichi kill. He claims to have gained his old age features through plastic surgery and is actually still in his early 30s. Sayla, pronounced almost like sailor without the R, is a prostitute that Ichi frequently visits. She has many bruises that are inflicted by her pimp, leading Ichi to have flashbacks of his past. Karen is a hostess. She's one of Kakihara's friends. She assists Kakihara in locating members of Jisan's group. Then there are the twins, who are members of Kakihara's crime group there. There's Takeshi. He's the boy who's the son of one of Kakihara's killers, and he often witnesses Ichi crying after his murders. And he is also Ichi's successor as the next killing machine manipulated by the old geezer. Now, here's what I really wanted to share. Here are a few reviews from readers of the manga. And then in particular, I want to see what you think of these manga reviews, Sean. See how they might stack up to the movie. One person's manga review was, quote, "Every day we are farther from God." End quote. So, somebody read the manga and the only thing they could do is go online and say, "Every day we are farther from God." Let's see what somebody else said. They said, quote, "Great read if you really want to see some effed up shit." End quote. Okay. Here's another one. "If you're looking for a good guy, go somewhere else." End quote. Okay. This is one that I think sounds the way I review things sometimes. It says, and I quote, "I wouldn't say this manga was totally necessary to make." End quote. We got another one. Now, this one is a little hard on the ears. If you have any young folks, maybe give them some earmuffs. But this one says, quote, "Hard to tell where the blood ends and the semen begins." Ellipses, end quote. And then, of course, here's my personal favorite. Quote, "I felt filthy and degenerate for continuing to read." End quote. So knowing that's how people feel about the manga, I'm really wondering how we're going to feel about this movie. And also, maybe I should have read those manga reviews before I picked this movie.
It's so funny because when you mention this, when you mention like that maybe Ichi should be the thing that we do this week, I have seen this movie before. Unlike you guys, I was familiar with it. I probably saw it around 2003, 2004, somewhere in that neighborhood. And because it's a very out there movie. So obviously when you have a movie like this, word is going to travel rather fast of like, hey, you want to see something messed up? And you show you Ichi the Killer and you're like, oh, okay, yes, this is a bit crazy and insane. And when you mentioned it, I was just like, oh, that's a movie I like. I should have known better. I should have said something, but it had been so long since I'd seen it. And I think I'd only had seen it the one time. Because this is probably not a movie that a lot of people are going to go back to on a regular basis, I don't think.
Nor should they.
I think I might have some arguments for that, though. But it's a little strange that he picked this one. But hey, we're gonna go with it. But we do want to say this. We're gonna try to keep it, in the regular HMP family friendly as it were. But the subject matter in this is a little bit out there. So if indeed that might be something that we know we do have, parents that listen with their kids and stuff like that, this may not be the episode that you do that with. So
yeah, I promise to pick Casper next time, people. I'm sorry.
Keep that in mind. Here's the IMDb plot line. It has sadistic Yakuza enforcer Kagehara searches for his missing boss. He comes across Ichi, a repressed psychotic killer who may be able to inflict levels of pain that Kagehara has only dreamed of achieving. This is directed by Takashi Miike from 2001. Would it surprise you guys to know that this guy, Takashi Miike, has, how many credits does he have right now? It's over 100 something. So he's been doing stuff since 1991, and wow. He currently has 105 directing credits. He's directed at least 2 things a year, every year since 1991, sometimes, 4 or 5 things. But he's quite the prolific guy. He's done, like, this movie, and in the exact same year, another movie that he did that is wild and crazy, but on the absolute opposite side of the scale is called The Happiness of the Katakaris. It's a musical. This director also does family film and stuff like that. So I don't think you're going to find somebody who's got a more eclectic filmography than this guy.
When I hear crazy high numbers and output, I'm expecting it to be sort of like an exploitation cinema person. Like I expect maybe all of his stuff is like this because they get in that groove where you make it for a small enough amount. You don't need to screen that much. You're kind of in the habit. You got the same crew, kind of a Corman-esque approach to filmmaking. But I guess I'm wrong if he has that kind of range.
He does work with a lot of the same people, even in some of the kids' films and stuff like that he's done. But he's one of these guys that's really all over the map. He has the lovely distinction of being the only guy that didn't get his Showtime special on. So Showtime years ago did a Masters of Horror series where Mick Garris got a whole bunch of directors together and said, okay, Showtime has given us this. You guys, here's your budget. You can do whatever you want. Just do it. We got no restrictions. We're on Showtime. Have at it. So all these great directors, like John Carpenter and John Landis and a handful of other people, they all go out and create their thing. Takashi Miike comes and he does one, and Showtime says, we're not going to air that. And when you watch it, it's called Imprint. It's out on DVD. You can find it fairly easily. When you watch it, it is one of those that you just go, yeah, I understand why they wouldn't want to put that even on paid television. They're like, no, we can't be responsible for having this meat society. No, thank you. But so let's kind of get into it, Bruce. How do we want to address our situation here?
Okay, well, here's the first thing I'll say is not a movie for everybody. Not only does that apply to the population in general, but it might even apply to the cast here of Hero Movie Podcast. This is not a movie for everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with my defense here that we'd had a nice run of Japanese cinema. We had the Lone Wolf and Cub that you recommended, Adam. We had Initial D that you also recommended, Adam. We had Bleach, and that was a little more middle of the road, but still, not something that we regretted watching. So I thought Adam's having a lot of luck with Japanese cinema. What's something he hasn't picked yet that I can pick? And the first warning for me should have been that it was on Shudder, like,
yes.
Because so far the movies I've watched on Shudder are more like I would recommend these to people as an elaborate practical joke or something. They're pretty gory, pretty gruesome. Like I'm not watching mainstream horror there like you see at the movie theater. So maybe I had some warning there.
Yeah, you're not going to find a lot of PG-13 horror on Shudder.
But I think here the best thing we can do is try to communicate in broad strokes what people are getting into so they can decide if they want to get into it or not. Like, I think that just saying the fact that, I even had to say put some earmuffs on so I could reference body fluids in one of the reviews of the manga. I'm going to say that there are body fluids other than blood on the screen, nice and big, close up, like in the first 5 minutes. Is that fair to say, Adam?
It's probably under that. But yeah, it's like,
and the director... What's his first name?
Takashi Miike.
Yeah, Takashi.
Just say Miike. That's how most people will do it.
Miike claims that is not movie magic. That's the real stuff you're seeing.
That's a lot of work. If indeed it is what he says that it is. But that's where your title screen comes from. Your title screen comes from human goo, and that should tell you right now what kind of movie we're working with here.
And the weird thing is, it actually doesn't keep up that level of extreme as you go. But the problem is, I don't see most people making it through that, at least not if they're watching this with anyone else in the room. Okay. So I guess you throw that out right up front and people are already going to say, nope, this isn't for me, or maybe this is. But I want to tell you what really piqued my interest is not having seen the movie, but being familiar with the look of the character Kakihara.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that this movie came out in 2001, right? Did I get that year right? Adam?
Correct.
2001.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing I thought is we would look at this movie and we would spend some time talking about maybe how Kakihara, the character Kakihara in this movie, a little bit more colorful than he is in the manga, how this character may have influenced a little bit Heath Ledger's depiction of the Joker in The Dark Knight. Like, I thought that's the big takeaway from this movie for our audience. The problem is I don't know if people are going to be interested in watching this enough. Like that argument is such a small part of this movie all of a sudden, having seen it, that I still think it's worth mentioning and maybe talking about a little bit. But I don't want people to think, oh, okay, so this is like the Japanese version of The Dark Knight. Because
perfect. No, that's not what we're working with here.
But then I've also seen people strangely say, like, you tone it down, and it kind of is. So I don't know, man. Like saying that Ichi is an even more damaged version of Bruce Wayne, I could kind of see that a little bit. Childhood trauma causes him to strike fear into the criminals of whatever this city is that's kind of like Gotham. And then the way that Kakihara kind of is originally working for the gangs, and then he goes solo and starts doing his own thing. And his dream is to be killed by Ichi which is kind of like I've always argued that, particularly in The Dark Knight, we see the Joker whose one goal is to get Batman to kill him because he's so damaged. I mean, you see that parallel here, and they both end with kind of like rooftop fights, and both Kakihara and Joker go off the building, but Joker gets saved because it's Batman, and Kakihara bites the dust and hits the ground.
Well, and the thing is, too, is that, if Ichi's Batman in this kind of scenario, he makes Frank Miller's Batman look like,
Yeah.
like Rainbow Bright.
Even the super edgy 90s comics that in the first wave of Image didn't quite go into Ichi territory.
No, it's over the top. And here's the thing. One of the biggest points of this entire movie is that it is over the top. It is crazy, it's insane, and it's meant to do that to you on purpose. It's meant to overload everything that's coming at you. That's the entire point of the movie, is to kind of get you oddly desensitized to all of that kind of stuff.
And then also with Kakihara, I wanted to talk some more because it's sort of a snake eating its own tail thing too, because we know that the man who laughs inspired the Joker. The man who laughs had this rictus grin similar to the Chelsea grin, Glasgow smile kind of thing that Kakihara has going on and that later Heath Ledger has going on. So I kind of sometimes wonder, and I couldn't find really enough legitimate sources of anybody talking about it. It was just mostly fan theory stuff. But I'm curious maybe how much some Joker imagery influenced the way Miike dressed Kakihara, and then vice versa, if maybe Heath Ledger and Nolan were familiar with this film when they made The Dark Knight, because just some of the color scheme and the once again, Kakihara in the movie, other than he has the facial disfigurement in the manga, but he doesn't have the bright colors. He's an older guy that wears dark suits with dark hair. And I just want to know how much of this like snake eating its tail Joker stuff is going on here. Did you? I mean, you had to think of the Joker a little bit, right, Adam? Right, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, he's this skinny, weird character who's just over the top and mad. He is absolutely
bright
crazy.
Purple clothes too. I mean, you can't ignore the wardrobe he chooses.
Well, and his wardrobe changes throughout the entire film, and I think that's actually really cool. And that's why he's on the poster. Like, the movie's called Ichi the Killer, and if you put Ichi on the poster, people would go like, so what? It's a dude. Like,
Ichi's a very boring looking person.
Yeah,
like don't take this personally, Mr. Ichi, but you're a boring looking person, and that's by design. The idea of the character is the person you would least suspect of being this unstoppable assassin is the one who is indeed the unstoppable assassin.
And now, we can also, to give people an idea, the guy who plays Kakihara is the same gentleman who was in the Thor movies as one of the there,
Tadanobu Asano.
Yeah, there you go. See, I know this week we're going to screw up a whole bunch of Japanese names, so apologies for that stuff in advance. But he was in the Thor movies as one of the what do you call it?
Friends
Warriors
3, we'll call it.
Yeah, one of the Warriors 3.
Warriors 3. That's it.
But
yeah, no, he is the icon of this film, and so much so that's when you can find all of the fake Ichi the Killer fans when they just go like, oh yeah, Ichi with that with the big mouth and all that kind of stuff. You'd be like, oh,
the
okay.
fake fans.
Yeah, I'm telling.
Yeah, there's a ton of those fake Ichi fans.
I'm telling you, you get into some horror communities, and there are some people out there like, oh yeah, I know all this cool stuff. Yeah, the guy with the face and stuff. Like, no, that's not who that is. You dumb. That's what everybody thinks of. But at the same time, too, I like that because it's kind of a litmus test to figure out who knows what. Sean, you didn't take to this movie too well.
I didn't. And how far do you guys think I got? Because that was a good thing that Bruce brought up last night when I texted you both. I'm out. I am not watching this movie.
I think Adam and I probably are suspecting the exact same scene. So I'll go ahead and go first, Adam, and you tell me if you agree with me or not, and then we'll let him answer.
All right.
Is that a fair way to proceed?
I think so.
Because I think that Kakihara cutting off his own tongue is probably where you tapped out, Sean. Do you have a different thought, Adam?
Oh man, I thought it was the initial torture scene. I was just like, I felt like that right there could have been to me, if I was like, oh, that's the first time where we go over the top. There's a lot of kind of sort of implied violence at the beginning. There's some. First of all, I do want to say this: if you having a problem with, and hey, it's fine if you do, and I think it probably makes you a better person if you do. If you have a lot of hatred of violence against women or violence against people in general, but just very specifically women and stuff, stay out of this movie because there's a ton of it. But at the same time, I feel like the time that you have to go out is that torture scene, because the guy is like, he's hanging from hooks. He's nude, hanging from hooks as he gets hot liquid. Maybe it's water. Maybe I thought it was boiling oil. That's what I thought it was.
I thought it was boiling oil.
So he's, he's strung up, face down, back up to the sky, hanging off of hooks, and then gets hot oil on his back. I was like, I think that's where Sean got out. Let's find out.
So, I read the descriptor of this movie first, and immediately the hackles came up because I am not a torture porn guy in any way. I have never watched like Cabin Fever. I've never watched any style of movie like that. I haven't watched any of that. I hate them. I hate those movies. Like I have an aversion to them. In fact, so all of the red flags are up on this movie just from the descriptor, right? So I then go to YouTube to see a review of this movie. Mm-hmm. Within 15 seconds of the review, just the review. I was like, there is no way in hell am I watching this movie. I didn't even get the pass for Shudder because I knew I wouldn't need it. I was at a point, like I'm not even kidding, 15 seconds into the YouTube review for this movie.
That's just when they're going, thanks guys, like and subscribe.
I don't know who any of these characters are. I don't care. This isn't going to be a thing where like, oh, I'll go do something else as I'm watching it. Like there was no chance of that. This is the exact style of movie that like I understand where people who are closed-minded are like, nope, because that's what I have towards this style of movie. I know that like like there's a lot like. Look, I went into this knowing like I hate this pick. I absolutely despise this pick, and I know that of the three of us, I'm the one who the most is going to be like, I don't want to waste my time with that thing. Like I know that. But I also know myself enough to know that I get very angry at times on this show where like, why would you ever pick this? Like after the 8th Fast and the Furious movie, yes, I was pissed off that we're still watching these movies. But with this movie, it's a different animal because I understand that there are people who are fans of this style of movie. And I am just not one of them. Now, listening to you guys talk about Heath Ledger's Joker is inspired by this movie immediately makes people want to see this movie. And I cannot state enough what a very, very bad correlation that is. Because there are children, you know what? Who gives a crap about the kids? Let's not even talk about the kids. That's making platitudes that I don't honestly believe. For the people who are like, oh, you know what? Like, because there is a Venn diagram of people who love horror movies and people who love superhero movies, and those circles are pretty like they're not very far away from each other. They intersect basically in the middle. This is not it. Like the movie It. There's some scenes in it where it's like, oh, geez, but there's nothing where you're like, well, I am never going to be able to unsee that. And just from the 15 seconds I saw of this movie. There are moments I will never unsee. And so that is problematic for people like myself who are like, not all the Pixar movies in the world will get rid of the images that I saw from this movie. And it's very like, I know it's upsetting for upsetting's sake. Like, I understand that's what the director and that's what the script is going for. I don't care. This is not for me. This is a style of movie that if they never made another one, it would not affect me in any way because I'm not going to watch them anyway. And so that's where I'm at with this. Like, I can't give it a review at the end of this episode because I'm never going to watch. I will never watch this movie ever.
Now, let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying that you're cool if Adam and I spoil this, or would you rather it be unspoiled in case you watch it later?
I think it's totally fine if you spoil this. I think it's not going to affect me either way. This is literally like, I gotta tell you, like, even going into this episode of like getting ready to record this episode, I knew that it was going to make me tired talking about just even this movie, because it gets back to some deep rooted stuff with me where I'm like, I don't want to watch this sort of violence towards people. I just don't.
So, Adam.
Yes.
I think we do need to help. Like, there might be people that are like, oh yeah, I can handle some gory stuff, but I don't want like too much gory stuff. So I'm trying to help people at home figure out the tone on this movie a little bit. I would say, now, I've never seen Cannibal Holocaust. Have you ever seen that, Adam?
No, I started watching it way back when, and the style of it, maybe it was just I don't know, but I never got to it now.
But I have seen Green Inferno, which I get the idea it's a very similar type of movie, just a little more palatable.
Yeah, but Green Inferno's boring though. That's the biggest problem there. That movie's just boring as snot. I wanted crazy, over the top, and insane stuff in Green Inferno, and it never happened. It never delivered what I wanted it to, which was like, maybe Sean would like that movie because nothing really happens.
Because one thing I would say, and feel free to disagree with me here, Adam, but I would say that the gore in here never looks super realistic. I mean, it's gross, but it's like, you can tell it's theater gore. It's not like some of the grindhouse stuff from the 70s and 80s where they were really killing animals on camera. That's why I reference Cannibal Holocaust.
It is super over the top. It gets to the point where, and I honestly believe that's one of the big things of this movie, and I'll talk about it because I took some notes last night that may not be super great notes because I was having a couple of drinks, and so I was like, I got real Gene Shalit, and picked up my phone just like, hey, here's what this movie's all about, and we'll get to those in a little bit.
There's non-gore elements. Like, this movie isn't a gore dependent film. This isn't Blood-Sucking Freaks, which I recently made the bad choice of watching. Like I'm trying to figure out how to tell people where to put this, and that can be a little, like, it's a little bit more than the samurai movies where they cut the throat and the blood spurters shoot out gallons, but there's some just like straight up homages to the samurai blood spurts in this movie.
This is very much a as the cutesy saying goes, high pressured Asian film. It's where people get cut, and then it is just like Kill Bill, just high-powered PSI spurts of blood going everywhere.
And like, one of the scenes that I think is downright hilarious rather than gory is like, there's a scene where there's a room full of people that Ichi needs to kill. He goes into the room, the camera stays at the door, and all you see is like blood and guts flying out the door, like in a cartoon, as if he's in there with a wood chipper, just throwing people in it and shooting them out the door.
Yeah, there's over the top stuff, and then there's stuff that is to kind of make you laugh and just go like, oh, that's just silly and stupid, and it is. But I'd put it towards this because I guess I want to put it in kind of a category so people that may go and see it would know. I would put it on par if you're cool with the first Saw movie or any of the Saw movies for that measure. You'll probably be okay with this. It's kind of that levels, but there'll be enough, kind of over the topness of it that it's not going to turn you off that bad. But if you say, oh, look, I any of the Saw movies, no thank you, then there's no way in heck you need to have anything to do with this movie.
And I would say for me, because I've got a pretty high tolerance for gore, particularly fake gore, because it just looks fake to me. But for me, like the sexual violence and the sexual assaults and the sort of stuff in that vein was far more disturbing to me than the gore, because there's like literally a scene where a lady's getting beaten. Ichi comes in and kills the guy and says, he'll never beat you again. Now I'll be the one who beats you. Like what the heck is going on with that dynamic? And then he kills her because she slaps him or something. I mean, a lot of the, I don't know what, just the weird approach, the way the movie treats female characters, which is far more bothersome to me than the guy with the hooks in his back and the oil thrown on it. Cause that's like obvious fake. The other stuff feels a little too real. Yeah.
That is. Yeah. That is probably the worst part of it, or at least the part that ends up feeling the most uncomfortable. Cause it was just like, there's nothing fun about that.
But on the other hand, there is some stuff that's fun in it, so that's why I'm like trying to figure out how to set the tone with this and set expectations for this movie and help folks who might have a Shudder subscription, haven't seen it yet, decide, do I want to watch it or not? Which is weird because we're so spoiler heavy. Maybe you don't have any interest in wanting to watch it, but it does have some just like straight off the wall crazy moments that you kind of want to see. Like if there was a way to give people timestamps so they could go to some of these crazy moments, that would be kind of nice. But the first one, I guess, that I'll mention is we find out that there's like a functional reason to Kakihara's facial disfigurement, his Chelsea grin, if you will, because they're held together by piercings at the corner of his mouth, but he takes those piercings out. The mouth opens up huge. So a guy punches him and like he just swallows his whole fist. And that is just straight up lunatic crazy that I like. Did you like that scene, Adam?
Yeah, I love that. But I even love in the beginning when you first meet him and you see him from behind, he's smoking a cigarette, and instead of just a regular plume of smoke going out, you have a bit of smoke out to the left and right side of his face before you even see him, which is really cool. And he turns around and later again smokes that cigarette, and the smoke comes out of the sides of his cheeks and stuff. That's very cool. Super. Again, that's where that awesome iconography for this character comes into place. And it's really weird because having seen this movie before, in my mind, he had his, he took out those piercings and had the kind of jaw there a lot more than I remember. Or at least I remember it a lot more than what is actually there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, we must see like 3-4 minutes worth of that. It's like, maybe 30 seconds, if that.
Yeah, and at the end, a pretty bad CGI rendering of what it looks like. I mean, the effects aren't always.
But in 2001, that looked pretty cool. That was just
sure.
dude, that was sick.
The practical effects are good, CGI not so much. Another crazy moment for me is when the old geezer, the one that's like Ichi's handler, when he takes off his jumpsuit or whatever, and he's wearing like a Speedo, and he's got this this bodybuilder body underneath, and that is so weird and out of nowhere. Nothing sets us down to expect that to happen, and it's never mentioned again once it happens. It's like one of those weird, surreal moments. How did you feel about the
it's so
reveal
great.
of his?
It's so great because and you'll think back and go like, Did he look like that? Is it just the loose clothes? Could he have hidden all that underneath loose clothes? And he certainly doesn't. They CGI his face on this muscle man body, but it's hilarious to see that actually happen and him take all this loose fitting clothes off and literally in a Speedo, just super muscle bound. And he's like, what would you say? Probably in his 50s.
Yeah, who knows, man? Who knows? Some folks age really well when you know what I mean. So who knows? You could tell me he's 50, or you could have told me he's 35 with a hard life, or 65 with a good life. I can't
There's a lot of smoking and drinking going on in Japan, so your guess is as good as ours sometimes.
And another part that I thought was just absolutely Mondo Bizarro here, and this is one I wish you had seen, Sean, so you could comment on, because it's not gory at all. but they're asking this lady where her pimp is because they want to locate her pimp. And there are these twin brothers, and one of them's like being violent, trying to get her to tell him, and the violence isn't working. So the other twin brother just pulls some like dog ears out of his pocket. They're on like a little headband thing, like what sometimes maybe like I've seen my wife and my daughter wear around Halloween or Christmas with like reindeer antlers or something.
Yeah, it's a cutesy girl thing that you'd see all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
He puts the dog ears on, he starts sniffing the lady, and then he immediately jumps up and he knows how to find the guy. Like he can follow the trail like a bloodhound. But what I don't know is, does he have to have those dog ears on to use that skill at him?
It was quite an ordeal, and everybody's like, oh, he's getting them out. He's getting them out. He's wearing them. He's putting them on. He goes over, sniffs this lady's crotch and goes, I know where he's at.
So do you think it would have been worth sitting through the bad parts to see the dog ear part, Sean?
No. No.
And then the character Karen, which is interesting because all these folks have names that I struggle to pronounce. And then we got a person with the name Karen. So that sticks out, like dog poo in your punch bowl.
Mm.
And then not only is her name Karen, but she just randomly goes between speaking Japanese and English like mid-sentence. And that was kind of nice because every once in a while I didn't have to read the subtitles, and I could I can look at my phone for a second while
yeah,
she's
you ever
talking.
have moments like that where you're just like, did I learn Japanese? Do I just know how this works now? Is
Yeah,
that
like, man, they say you watch enough, you learn it. And the interesting thing to me is her name is Karen. According to the story, she is Chinese.
right?
And she speaks Japanese and English with no explanation for why she goes into English. And also everybody around her seems to understand when she goes into English what she's saying.
Most of the time, but like at the same time too, there's a lot of like silences and stuff to where like we assume that they probably know, but I don't know that like necessarily we all know that that's what they actually understand, which I also think is hilarious. I like to think that they don't understand it, and she's just going into English, and they're like, I mean, I guess she's saying something, so sure, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it I don't know. It kind of made me wonder. Well, like I'm trying to think of times I've watched English language movies where a character slips in and out of a language that I don't speak, and I just kind of assume they're just making exclamations or something, that it's not moving the story along because I don't have any idea what they're saying. But here, what she says actually moves her story along.
Yeah, and she's actually really good. Her English is actually pretty good. So it's not like sometimes I've seen a couple of shows where they're like, okay, now this character is speaking English, but the English is just not good enough to where I'm like, I know you're speaking English, but I can't understand what you're saying. But it's like you can understand her really well, which is
and
super
her
nice.
Her English was so good, and with the name Karen, I wondered if this character was supposed to be like a Chinese American who moved back to Japan, or maybe what the story was there, but I never got an explanation for her English, like occasionally drifting into English.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do like want to talk about, and just I guess again as a warning to everybody, the movie it's a lot about violence, but it's also about sex and the relationship of sex and violence and things like that. And it is, it's so crazy. It's over the top and nuts, but it is a lot about what I'm trying to go around it in a better way.
I also think it's real important to point out that it has this confusing ending that kind of tells us that not everything we saw was true.
Well, here's the thing: what most people will think of when they think of this movie is the crazy, over the top, violence and kind of some of the gore effects and things like that. But the movie is actually a lot more complicated than it probably actually gets credit for. There's a lot of going back and forth in time. There's a lot of things that you may miss where you're like, oh, that's not a real thing that actually happened. That was like a memory that was more or less implanted into his head.
There's a little Total Recall going on here. I think people would understand that terminology.
Yeah, there's a bit of that going on. You're wondering what's real, what's not real, and especially towards the end, we see things that don't necessarily actually happen, and then we fast forward a couple of years at the end of the movie. We fast forward 10, 15 years maybe, and there's no real mention of it. You just kind of are left to sort of understand what you just saw, and it's a little tough. And
it makes a couple things clear. Like we see Kakihara get sliced in the head with Ichi's boot blade, which you never mentioned that he does all of this horrific killing by a blade that's stuck to the heel of his boot. Like he doesn't even like have his hands available. With one leg, he kills all these people. But we see the slash clearly in Kakihara's head. But then at the end of the movie, we realize that the old geezer just imagined that. Like the old geezer who's been implanting memories can't even trust his own eyes now. We saw that Ichi had cut off a child's head, but then that child is actually still alive and grows up to be the next Ichi, basically. And so it's telling us that a lot of the horrific stuff that we've seen didn't actually happen by what's in the final scene. So then you have to go back and ask what did happen in this movie and what didn't, particularly anything with Ichi involved.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know, unreliable narrator, because I don't know that we're necessarily told this from anyone's particular perspective, but you can't always trust what you're seeing in this movie.
Yeah, it's the same concept as an unreliable narrator, even if there wasn't a narrator.
Yeah, I want to go through just a couple things I kind of wrote down here in a drunken stupor. It's 2001, but Takashi Miike is doing a lot of 90s video style shots and edits, which I thought was hilarious. A lot of the flashbacks and stuff are done in like what honest to God came in camcorders, back in the late 90s. Just that kind of weird sort of digitally kind of look, but this was clearly shot on film, but there's so much weird digitalization and stuff that happens to it, and there's weird and odd
it's not
jumps.
Not out of the realm of possibility that he had a lower budget and was using older, like a video toaster or something to do something.
See, I don't think so, because they go back. There's at least one specific shot where it goes from that right back into the film, and it feels like they did all that in post on purpose. It feels like, and at that point, he'd done enough things, and he was at this point, Takashi Miike is pretty darn successful in his career. It's 2001, been working since 91. He's probably got 60 things under his belt by this point. So he's got plenty I think he had plenty to work with here. So I wrote down that this movie is a meditation on violence. It's over the top to be over the top, and it wants you to see so much that you eventually don't care. We see a woman kicked around, and you feel nothing, because just the scene before, you actually saw a woman beat up and actually cut to shreds. So it's one of those things that, if that scene where, a woman was being, beat up beforehand, if that was before that scene, you'd go, oh my gosh, this is, horrible and disturbing. But when you see it after, an crazy over the top scene, you're like, well, that's not so bad. And that's where a lot of these characters are in their lives, is like they've seen these things, they're desensitized to these things, they mean nothing. So I said, let's see. It's one of those movies that works in two ways. It's skewing the over-the-top nature of it all. After seeing the violence go on for so long, it means nothing. But even then, every now and then, something will make you squirm in your seat, while at the same time being something of the it's saying something of the stupid audience members who are actually viewing all this and actually think it's cool. Because there are a group of people that watch this and just be like a
Verhoeven kind of approach.
I think there's
like a Verhoeven story.
I think there's certainly a lot of that in here, because to me, well, especially with Ichi, right? Ichi is this hardcore crazed killer. He doesn't like killing. He cries, a whole bunch. So he doesn't want to have anything to do with these emotions. But yet, when that happens, he's physically aroused over the idea of violence, over the idea of killing somebody, and that is, to me, that's a lot saying of it's the audience. That's the audience for these films that see this movie and just go, oh, I like all the gore, I like all the over the top crazy stuff, and don't think about the actual underlying story that's actually in there as well. I said Ichi is a stupid audience member who's dumb as a rock, easily brainwashed into thinking anything that you tell him. And that's when we go back to that kind of, there's also like a Manchurian Candidate kind of vibe going on as well, where we've kind of brainwashed his past into thinking, oh, this is what happened to you, these are the people that did it, and now you need to go and enact your revenge and everything.
Yeah, that's a better reference. I use Total Recall. I like Manchurian Candidate better.
And yeah, just the fact that he's
I've never seen Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, watch the original, the John Frankenheimer flick. It's so darn good. Angela Lansbury, fantastic.
So I've got a little trivia for you, Sean. I'm going to see what you think of these 3 bits of trivia, okay?
Sure.
So the film was banned in Malaysia. The thing that's most interesting to me about that bit of trivia is why just Malaysia? Like, are there other countries that have standards as high as Malaysia? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that it depends on the ratings board of Malaysia.
I think they're one of those people
one.
that I think Malaysia, like, because they have some of that problems. Is I think they're also I don't want to necessarily say ban happy, but if it doesn't come up to the the social norms and all that kind of stuff, they're off wanting to just go like, nope, you can't do that here.
Because I was expecting this one to be like Faces of Death, where the cover said banned in 86 countries, and this one just banned in Malaysia. Is kind of boring. So at the Toronto International Film Festival, they showed this movie, Sean, at the Toronto International Film Festival, and they gave out barf bags before the movie. So do you think that was just a publicity stunt, or do you think people needed those barf bags?
I think that was a publicity stunt.
Supposedly somebody barfed in them.
Do that.
Supposedly someone barfed and passed out as well, so who knows?
Well, I take 3 kids to the movie theater, so if they gave us each barf bags and I got the jumbo popcorn, I could distribute a little bit in each barf bag, and then they could have their own little bag, and they're all sticking their hands into the popcorn.
I love that stuff, though.
Should do that.
That's very William Castle, and I love anything that just goes like, we're going to have you sign a warrant away that says that if you die of a heart attack while watching this movie, we're not hold liable. I love that crap.
They made a prequel to this movie called One Ichi, and the same actor, Nao Omori, plays Ichi, but they did not have Miike direct the prequel. Do you think that was a good call or bad call?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where he probably had 8 billion other things to do anyways, and probably they couldn't afford him for this, for whatever it was at that point. That's my guess.
He's doing 2 movies a year, and he can't squeeze this one in there somewhere.
You
can't tell me out of those 101 films, some of them are stinkers.
Oh, no, some of them are. But, we got the Dead Alive movies are good. The Audition is good. Happiness of the Carcarias is good. I just saw First Love in the theater last year. That was, I remember liking it. Maybe not his greatest.
What's the name of the Peter Jackson Rat Monkey movie?
Dead Alive or Brain Dead, depending upon where you live.
And then Miike also has a Dead Alive.
Dead or Alive.
Oh, okay.
Big difference.
Is that the one where the ladies play volleyball in the beach or whatever?
I wish it was. That'd be amazing. I wish. Don't think that that's not where my mind went when I first heard. Like, he did a Dead or Alive movie. He did like the fighting things with the jiggly gals in them. Sign me up for that flick. It's not that movie. It's not.
Too bad.
But yeah, listen, it's this movie, and it's tough to talk about plot and stuff because it is all over the place. There's so many jump backs and, who's working for who, how are they doing X, Y, and Z. It's all very confusing, but I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I think this is the second time that I've watched this, and I think I understood a lot more this time. So I feel like you could watch this a couple of times and get a little bit more of the story, because even reading through all of the kind of plot points and stuff on Wikipedia, it does cover a good portion of the film, but there's also a lot of stuff in there that's left out as well. So it's a movie that certainly is not for everybody, but if you stomached it enough and you were okay with it, you could go back and I think get more value out of it than one might think. But that's just me.
Yeah. It's rough. I think you skip past the first 5-10 minutes. It actually is an easier watch.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those where it's kind of like when you have like a low budget movie. Roger Corman was always like, if you're gonna have like, nudity and stuff, put it up towards the front, put it at the front of the film, and then that way, the viewer thinks that they've seen a lot more titillation throughout the entire movie than they actually have. Once in the beginning, once in the second act, and you're going to think, oh, well, it's just chock-a-block full of that stuff. Not really. You just think that it is.
Well, should we kick the podcast into the third act here and see if there's any possible way this movie connects back to Sylvester Stallone?
That's impossible, Bruce. This movie is from Japan.
Well, I've got news.
Whoa.
Thank you. I have a prepared statement. In September 2010, Stallone was on a world tour promoting the first Expendables movie. This tour led him to Tokyo, Japan, where Ichi the Killer was shot. He met sumo champion Hakuyo. Hakuyo? I don't know. We'll say yes. Who had just gone 15-0 in the sumo championships that year and won his 16th Emperor Cup. During the photo op, Stallone pretends to square off against Hayuko, and then in a playful manner, he picks up Stallone and lifts him up like a baby. Stallone was a good sport about the whole thing, but CNN at the time reported, and I'm quoting, Stallone found himself up against a man mountain later when sharing a stage with Hayuko. And they posted a picture of the event where Stallone is red in the face, surprised and sort of kind of smiling. There's a bunch of forced smiles, put up your dukes, yada, yada, yada. Stallone does so many of these foreign press junkets. It may be his full-time job, his actual full-time job. I get the jet setting, private plane, meet beautiful people lifestyle, but there is no way that life doesn't take a toll on you. And seeing as how Sylvester Stallone is 70 years old, his actual mileage is roughly around 127. He's a good ambassador for America since he looks tired all the time. He remembers when things were better, and he's the butt of jokes without even realizing it. And there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone connection is the city of Tokyo itself. I'm Sweet Shanzi. You're welcome, HMPers. You're welcome.
Well, here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check that out, head on over to reddit.com/r/Hero Movie Podcast and join up on the Reddits today and join in some conversations. We'd really appreciate that. Bruce, where does Ichi the Killer fall on the Robin rating system for you?
Boy, this is going to be highly individual based on the type of person that you are and what you're comfortable with, and what kind of day you're having. Because I watched this movie on Friday. And don't worry, Sean, I'm going to spare you any kind of details here, but I'll just say my morning started off. I got called to the hospital to see someone with a horrible facial injury, like real life, terrible, awful stuff. So I went in, dealt with that, got the person stable, had to send him to a different facility that had a little bit more in the way of resources to help him out. And then I came home and watched this movie. So it was not a great day to be watching this movie. But at the same time, it's like really hard to gross me out on a day like that. Now, if it had been like one of my kids' birthday parties and everything was just all like, fun stuff and nothing bad, and then I start watching it, it might have grossed me out more. But I had just dealt with some real life horror. So watching like fake horror, it's just like roll my eyes and go, amateurs. But as far as the type of person, type of day you're having, type of person you are, sometimes there are horrible, horrible highway accidents. And if you're the kind of person that slows down and looks for a nice long time, you might like this movie. If you're the person in the passenger seat that's like putting your hand over your eyes and turning your head and screaming at the driver to just go on by, you shouldn't watch this movie.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of helps divide it out. So how do I give this a Robin rating? I think I'm actually going to give it kind of bottom end Damian Wayne, because for the person who likes this movie, it's probably going to be one of their favorite movies of all time. But for everybody else, they're not going to make it past that opening with the liquids and stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm rating this on behalf of myself and others by just saying like it's a real coin toss there, but don't even throw the coin in the air if you know right off the bat you can't handle it.
It's true. For me, this is a Tim Drake. I do enjoy this movie for what it is. It's not a quote unquote good time. It certainly isn't. But there's also, if you're able to get around the insaneness of it all, the grotesqueness of it all, there is something else underneath there that's I don't want to say important or anything, but it's interesting. It's interesting to look at and to kind of try to dissect. And I did more of that this time than I did my previous one. But if this is a type of movie that is for you, I think you will enjoy it, though I don't believe the majority of people out there will enjoy it. And again, I wish I would have remembered that when it was brought up by you, because I would have been like, oh, that's right. That's all the stuff that happens in that movie. No way that, most people need to see this movie. I'll say that.
But the way things are going, we were going to cover it sooner or later. So well, how about we jumped on it now? And at least it's not like we did this instead of something that was obvious.
Now, Sean, I don't know if you remember how our system works properly, but I am going to go to you for your rating on this. I hope you remember how it works.
Not available.
Oh, so that's a Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Robin.
That is an NA.
Yeah, the person we never saw as Robin means you didn't see the movie.
Yeah,
I see. There you go.
It's only the second time we've invoked that rating.
Yeah,
the first
I
one
see.
was Adam.
The first one was me, where I had a different episode of Wonder Woman because the stupid thing didn't work right, and so I was like, well, I didn't really see it. So that was Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Robin is the
a Joseph Gordon-Levitt,
the one that I didn't watch it. So that's how it works. So that is it, everybody. Another week of HMP, and we're all happier for it, right? No, that's not true. I'm thinking, Sean, I think next week we ought to give the reins to you, seeing as how this was not so much in your camp.
But is it my turn? I don't even think it's my turn, is it?
I think so. I think it is.
Okay.
We got Bruce out in the first one. We'll have you, and then I'll take that one, and then we'll have the Patreon folks after that. So we'll come up with that in the after show. Would you like to hear that conversation? Head on over to patreon.com/HMP. Get yourself the Dinger Zone plus a pre-show and post-show where we talk about things like this. You get to see us without the veil. You get to see the real guys behind the mics, which is pretty much the same as we are here.
It's basically the same.
Yeah, we're really not. There's not much difference from who we are on the show versus who we are in actual life. But if they would like to find more of our work on the internet, Bruce, where might they go?
We took a week off on Chubby Wizard. Haven't been doing much Heroes and Villains, so go check out Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer, 30 questions. The podcast's so good that even kids in the show who probably shouldn't be listening to it, listen to it.
It's insane. It's a lot of fun. So do check out Snowpiercer 30 questions. Where else, Sean?
Mandalorian 30 questions, where we review the show Mandalorian week by week as we were watching it. Baby Yoda was a surprise to us. See what that sounds like.
Yeah, if you could hear people find Baby Yoda for the first time, oh, what a magical experience. If we could all go and live and find Baby Yoda again for the first time, boy, wouldn't life be a whole lot better. And check out the Film Find. I'm not sure what we're going to end up doing this week, but I don't know if Matt will be able to do it in time, but I saw Hamilton, and I quite enjoyed it, so maybe I'll review that on there. That is it, everybody.
Adam likes a musical.
Yeah, I know. I went in pretty jaded. I'm not going to lie to you. So it's actually surprising that I like it. So that is it, everybody. Join us next week for yet another fun movie adventure that's connected to comic books. For Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet, Bruce Leslie, I'm Anna Portress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.